Psychologically, the human being will say, oh, well, you are an angel and you are telling me not to do this and not to do that, and that I should do this and I should do that. That is very easy for you to say because you are an angel. You don't have desires like me. You don't need to eat like me. You don't change in wisdom and understanding like me. So therefore we would have so many excuses not to follow what that angel is teaching us, because he will never represent a living example. But because Allah has chosen and made the prophets human beings, the messengers are human beings, that means we human beings can follow their example. We don't have an excuse. We have a physical example in front of us of a human being who is behaving in a certain way. That means that we know psychologically that we can also follow that example. Maybe not to the same degree, but certainly we can follow that example. This is the wisdom of Allah sending the messengers as human beings. And Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam was one such human being. And he is the physical example. He is the practical example for us of how we should worship Allah. He is, and his example is, and his life is, in reality, Islam. It is the sunnah, the way, the teachings, the approvals of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam that constitutes the basis of our worship and our life as Muslims. This is very important to understand, because to be a Muslim means that we are submitting ourselves, we have surrendered ourselves to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not to my desires, not to my culture, not to my parents, not to my tribe, not to the ideas prevalent in society. No. Being Muslim means I willingly choose to obey Allah and submit myself to God. And how do I do that? By following the example of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. May Allah's peace and blessings be upon him. This is the essence of Islam. Brothers and sisters, this means Islam is what we can call tawfiqiyya. It is based upon guidance from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We cannot invent for ourselves and imagine for ourselves how to worship Allah. You can't do that. It is not permissible. Worshipping Allah is based upon the guidance of the Quran and the example of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. And this is the case with every other prophet and every other guidance that Allah gave. That is the case with the guidance that Allah gave to Isa ibn Maryam, to whom Allah sent the Injil. But the religion of Isa was Islam, the same religion as the religion of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. And the guidance that Allah gave to Musa, to Moses, was in the form of the Torah. This was the book that Allah gave to Musa. But the religion that Musa followed and the religion that he taught his people to follow was not different in its essence. It was also Islam, willing submission to the will of God. So the guidance of all the prophets was based upon this. And Allah also sent guidance to Ibrahim alayhi salam. And Allah mentions Prophet Ibrahim a lot in the Quran. In fact, he is mentioned, my dear brothers and sisters, as a great example and a very important example for us to follow. In fact, the Quran tells us, who abandons the way of Ibrahim except a person who has lost their mind? Who would abandon the way of Ibrahim? Ibrahim Hanifan, the one who surrendered himself to God and who followed the natural religion, submission to God. In fact, the Prophet ﷺ told us that every child is born upon the fitrah, hanifan, naturally inclined to worship Allah alone. It is only their environment that takes them away from that. It is the influences from outside that take them away from that nature upon which they were born. And that's why I want to go back now to culture. What is culture? When we say culture, what do we mean? Actually, from my research, there is no easy definition of culture. Culture is the things that people do, the things that people believe, the customs that people follow. It is in fact the social and physical environment in which people live. This is culture. Culture can be good and culture can be bad. The criterion or the means that we should judge our behavior, therefore, is not as Muslims based upon culture. It is not based upon what the people around us do. It is not based upon what my mother and father and my grandfather. It is not based upon what the people happen to be doing around us and what is normative behavior amongst them. No, that is not what our religion is based upon. The religion of Islam and being a Muslim is based upon what we have already said. The guidance from Allah in the Quran and the example of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This is the basis of being Muslim and this is the basis of Islam. Now some people will say, are you telling me that my ancestors are misguided? Are you telling me that my father and my grandfathers are wrong? Well, in response to this, I will ask you, are you telling me that your father and your grandfathers are infallible? That they could make no mistake? That they could not possibly in any way fail to misunderstand Islam? Are you telling me it is impossible that they have misunderstood or misrepresented something from the religion by mistake? If you know they have made a mistake, will you follow their mistake? If you know they have done something wrong, will you keep following them in wrong? If that is your choice, how can you claim to be Muslim? If you know that what your ancestors are doing, if you know that what your culture teaches is against the teaching of the Quran and is against the teaching of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, what does it mean, Muslim? What does the word mean, Muslim? Do you submit to Allah or do you submit to your culture? Make your choice. Because believe me, brothers and sisters, no prophet came to his people except they said exactly this: we are following the way of our ancestors. Read the Quran. I invite you, read it. But you see, that's the problem. No one bothers to read the Quran. No one bothers to study the Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the first word that Allah revealed to Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, Iqra, read, read in the name of your Lord who created you from a thing that clings. Read, and your Lord is most generous. He taught mankind by the use of the pen that which they did not know. Yes, the pen, qalam, writing, reading. And yet how many people have read the Quran? How many Muslims have read the Quran? And I don't mean, and of course I want to make an important point here, reading the Quran in Arabic is an act of virtue for which you will be rewarded even if you do not understand it. I in no way, shape or form am discouraging or intend to discourage anybody from learning to read the Quran in Arabic. It is in fact only the Quran in Arabic. Once it is translated, it is not technically the Quran anymore. It is the speech of Allah in Arabic. However, in the Quran,